Hi, my name is Ashley, and this is my husband, Mike.
Hey.
We have two little girls named Kylie and Mia who are 4 and 2 years old. And today's Montessori video is going to be much different than anything I normally do for my Montessori at Home series for a couple of reasons. One being we are not at home. We're actually on like a little mini vacation down in Colorado Springs. So we're sitting in the guest bed of the house that we're staying in for the next couple of days to film this video. And I thought it was a really opportune time to get into the nitty-gritty details
I got nowhere to run.
My husband on some of the questions that you guys ask me all the time about his perspective on Montessori related things at home. So while I've got him here, we're gonna grill him with a couple of questions and see what he has to say. So from one busy parent to another, today we're going to be sharing with you all about the husband's perspective on doing Montessori at home. Okay, so really quickly, just in case you are new to my channel, we've been doing Montessori at home with both of our girls since our oldest daughter was 6 months old. When we first started doing it, it was because I had actually been doing a little bit of online research and I kind of stumbled into it. He was actually away on work travel in Australia for 2 months when this happened. So I was the one who started the conversations about this idea of bringing Montessori into our home initially. And so that kind of sparked my first question that I have. I actually jotted down a couple of questions right before we sat down to do this video that I wanted to ask him that I know many of you guys have always asked me about. And so the first one was, what, if anything, did you already know about Montessori before I brought it up to you?
I knew literally nothing about it at all. I'd seen a couple schools with it on the school name, I guess, but that was the extent of my knowledge. I wouldn't even call that knowledge. I'd seen the word before, but I had literally no idea what it meant.
So you didn't know like that it was tied to Maria Montessori, like no idea?
No idea who Maria Montessori was or anything, or just like any of the philosophy around it at all. So it was all completely new to me.
So he was a total newbie. So for them, question number 2 was, after that happened, what's the first thing that you remember about me wanting to do Montessori at home back when Kylie was a baby?
Well, I mean, I think it was kind of hard for you to explain it to me at the time because I was on work travel, and honestly, like, I was just so tied in with like what was going on with work, and we had just moved to Denver, and I remember you trying to explain this stuff to me through the phone, and it just didn't really, I was listening to what you were saying, I was trying to follow along, but it didn't really click for me while I was overseas.
Yeah, I feel like that's the vibe I got too.
Yeah,
I was like, I'll wait till he gets home and then I'll really dive in. But I was so excited though, like I wanted to tell him.
I noticed that immediately. It was just like your genuine excitement about it, and it sounded like it had a lot of benefits to it. So I was like, that sounds great, and I always trust your parenting and your parental decisions. So I think it didn't really click for me till I got home though and got to see it in action.
I started setting it up while he was gone.
I was very confused though on a lot of stuff. Like, for example, we had just put up a crib, and then before I left, I think.
Yeah.
And then I got back and you're like, you need to take down the crib. I'm like, well,
I was like, we need to get rid of the crib. We do not need it anymore. And he was like, huh?
I was like, okay, sure, sounds good.
By the time you got home, I had the playroom kind of like the initial start to the playroom. Already done.
Yeah, I think it was just that you had found something that you were really excited about, and I thought it sounded great too, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question number 3 was, since Montessori is so different from a more traditional style of parenting, how do you feel about doing Montessori at home with our children? And maybe this might apply with in conversations with other dads maybe who have kids.
I love it. Personally, I feel like our kids are just that much more independent. It's incredible having them around and being as independent as they are. They take care of things around the house like that I didn't realize that kids at this age were capable of doing. As far as how do I feel about it with regard to other parents, I mean, I understand everyone's got their own philosophies and how they want to raise their kids, and I want to be respectful of that. So I don't go around being like, hey, our kids are being
we don't ever push it on other people. I mean, we share this information with you guys online, but that's because you guys are here by choice. We don't force it on people in real life who aren't asking. If they see it and they ask us, then we share it. But otherwise we're kind of we just kind of keep it to ourselves. But
I guess my only slight concern about it maybe is that because it is different from what would probably be considered traditional, is I probably don't really have anyone else to talk to about this kind of stuff, unless we really know any other people that are raising their kids the same way. If we have questions and stuff like that, I mean, there's a lot of resources out there, but it's kind of hard to share and compare experiences, how other parents are doing their upbringings and stuff like that in the same types of environments, because there's just
I think a lot of that will change though once Kylie starts going to school.
Yeah.
Because we'll be able to meet more families who are Montessori families and who get it. But yeah, up until this point, it's been kind of, I get that.
Yep.
Question number 4 was, how has doing Montessori at home impacted you as a parent? Like maybe in comparison to what you thought parenting might be before we had kids? Like, I guess that's kind of where I was going with that question.
Sure. Yeah. I think I always go to this as kind of the default answer is, in my opinion, it's the independence that just blows my mind. I know that like in the moment, you know, a lot of times like when the kids are kind of struggling with something and we're just letting them kind of struggle through it, I always want to just jump in and help them. You know, we're busy parents, we got a million things going, and like it's just so much of the time it just feels like it'd be easier just to like do it for them. But I feel like it's become so ingrained in my head now that like raising them with like a Montessori upbringing is kind of a long game to me. It's like you set them up for success later down the line. It does take a little more time and effort up front, but you know, it pays off in dividends. Like every time I see Kylie and Mia doing things that like, you know, cleaning up their plates after they're done with dinner and putting their plates in the sink and like helping unload the dishwasher. It's just like, you know, those are things that we could have easily always done for them, just like picked up after them and cleaned up after them, and it would have been easy in that moment instead of taking the time to like help them learn how to do those things. But now seeing that they're just able to do that on their own over and over and over, it's I think that's just the coolest thing about it. And so anytime I'm kind of like, okay, I'm gonna rush to do something, but like I need to slow down because it's gonna benefit us in the long run, because it's, you know, giving them the time that they need.
All right, so my next question for those of you again who may be new to the channel, Mike actually started his own company around Montessori a few months. Actually, has it been like over a year now?
August last year.
Yeah,
so.
With his business partner, and it's all Montessori materials. And I'm just curious, what made you decide to pursue Montessori as part of your business and what you were doing already? Because it was very different from what he was doing before that.
I think this one's gonna be pretty easy for me. It really marries a couple of my interests together between like, you know, doing entrepreneurial things and working with wood. Like those two things are things that just make me happy. And so it just made sense. And then tying in having kids, like I wanted to do something that, you know, between those two things, I could do something that could benefit our kids directly. And the quick backstory of the business is initially that it started out as just making, you know, wooden Montessori materials for our kids, but that evolved into, well, we could do this for a lot more kids than just our kids. And that's how my business partner and I got into talking about that, and we, you know, started up this business. He's a fairly new dad as well. His daughter is about to turn 1, I think next week actually. So just good timing all around, and we're both very, very passionate about entrepreneurship and our children. So I think having children kind of flipped our lives upside down. Like I always thought that like being a dad was just gonna be like, okay, we have kids now and life just goes on as normal, but I never expected like how my whole perspective on like life and what I want to do and just, you know, the world to me is just like, it's totally different now with our kids. And like everything I do, I want to do.
I want to share it with them.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to make the world a better place for them. I want to be a better person because of them. And I think that all those factors really contributed to leading me down this path, because it is a business that focuses on things for children. Like we'd never done anything before where we were targeting infants, toddlers, stuff like that. So we're still learning the processes of like developing things that are, you know, safety compliant and all the testing that goes along with it. So it's been off to a slower start than we expected, but luckily we do have a lot of stuff that's in the works right now, hopefully coming out very soon and throughout the summer. So
stay tuned for some updates on what's coming down the pipeline. Actually, I think next week you're gonna make an announcement on something, so look for that. Okay, and my last question is, this is primarily the question I get from most other parents is, hey, I am totally on board with Montessori. I'm really excited about it. My spouse, on the other hand, is not quite on board yet. And so my question is, like, what advice would you give to that other spouse who maybe is kind of new? Their spouse has come in and said, hey, let's do this, but they're still kind of unsure about it.
I feel like that's kind of tough because like everyone has, you know, a different personality on things. And like for me personally, when you approach me with it, I like to think that I'm very open-minded and that, you know, I'm willing to hear someone out no matter what they have to say and kind of make a decision from there. But I personally just I couldn't find any negatives about the whole thing. Like to me, that goes back to my earlier response of like, if you set them up early on and you kind of, this is gonna sound super cliche, but my dad always like growing up for me was always like, Michael, you work hard, you play hard. And I'm like, okay, Dad. Like even now, like I'm
Like you picture your dad saying that.
He still says that to me. I'm like, Dad, I work all day now. Like, what are you talking about? But anyway, to me, that kind of goes along with this in the sense that, you know, as I was mentioning before, like to me, it does feel like it's more work up front because there's so many times that we could have just, you know, given Kylie and me plastic cups and been like, here, you know, run off with your water or whatever. Instead, you know, I'm watching them hold very carefully a glass cup. Early on, my initial thoughts were like, why are we doing this? Like, why is this kid holding a glass cup right now? And sometimes we have accidents, and accidents that probably wouldn't happen if they were using your traditional
chuck it across the room and it doesn't
child
break.
materials, exactly.
Yeah.
But once you get past that part of it and it's now part of their life, like I just feel like it makes things way easier down the line. So it's really an investment in the child, putting in the work early on, and
well, then they learn to take care of their things.
Exactly.
They learn to be respectful
Yep.
of their environment. And it's like if you don't take the time out to do that, then they're not going to learn.
Right.
What they
Right.
learn is I can just chuck this across the room and nothing will happen.
And that's just one of many examples. I mean, like there's just so many benefits.
That was just the first one that came to mind for me.
Right.
Or what about the aspect of like the positive discipline part of it? Because like doing Montessori, the positive discipline kind of goes hand in hand, and some people maybe are brought up in a more traditional upbringing with a more traditional style of discipline, and so maybe they're like, what? I don't do timeouts. I don't like. Is there anything you want to say related to that?
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely something that got me kind of tripped up at first. The traditional way of doing things with that, or I guess for behavioral stuff, is just I didn't realize that there were other ways to do it until, you know.
I think that's the case with a lot of people. They just don't know what they don't know. Basically, they don't know that there are other alternatives.
Right. And a lot of times it kind of does seem like it would just be easier just to like be like, go to your room, or you know, go sit in this corner or whatever. I mean, that's the way I was raised, like sitting, you know, staring at the corner and just sitting there stewing and being like angry and getting angrier and angrier. And I'm like, I didn't learn anything from that. Those types of experiences never helped me build a better relationship with my parents when it came to behavioral stuff. Like it didn't really improve anything. Whereas like, you know, when Kylie and Mia do something that they shouldn't be doing, like after they take whatever time they need to kind of, you know, process it, and then be able to talk about it, I just think it's infinitely more effective. Like
it's a learning experience.
You're able to talk through it and learn from it, and you know, get on the same page about why it was or was not okay, and you know, what we could do better about it next time. Like that certainly was not the way I was raised.
Me either.
I was put in a, you know, go sit in the corner and just be angry, and then we didn't talk about it anymore. And like, and then I probably ended up doing the same thing again the next week, and then sitting in the corner again the next week. Yeah. It really goes back to it being time and an investment, because it's easier just to tell your kid, go to your room, close the door, and then not deal with it. For sure, and I get that. That's much easier to just, and it's much quicker.
Would you tell them then that it's worth it? I guess I'm trying to summarize. Like it's worth it to take that time to face your uncomfortability around having to do things or learn a new way, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's worth it. I would tell someone, yes, it's worth it, but whether they want to actually accept that and, you know, try it on their own, that's up to them.
And my advice, I've said this in other videos before, but in case you haven't seen some of those other videos, my advice to you, if you are the spouse that is trying to get your spouse on board, I always err on the side of education, like teaching them about it and modeling, showing them firsthand, letting them see, immersing them in it, that it works and that it does make a huge difference as far as your respect for your child goes, respect for their independence, and helping them learn how to be their own little people. Actions speak louder than words, like 1,000-fold. So being able to model that and to educate your partner about it so that they understand why you're doing it a certain way, I think that goes a long way to helping get them on board if they're a little bit on the fence about it. All right, so that was my last question. Do you have any parting thoughts?
This is fun.
Okay, well, I hope that his answers were helpful to some of you guys who have always wondered what my husband's perspective was on the whole thing, since you guys always see me talking about it, but you don't really ever see him in my Montessori videos talking about it. So if you have any other questions maybe that you're wondering, feel free to drop those in the comments down below, and Mike will do his best to answer them the best that he can, you know, in between his other jobs that he's doing and all the other stuff. If you are interested in learning more about doing Montessori at home, I actually offer a couple of e-courses that walk you through it step by step. So I will leave links to those in the description box down below. And just in case you are new to my channel, I also wanted to let you know that this video is part of a much larger series on this YouTube channel called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I, or you and us, for doing Montessori at home with your children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in watching more of, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.